this is my first time addressing any kind of a organization of this nature. I mean, I've gone up in front of people at church and given little talks and stuff like that. But this is completely different. I can say what I want to now. I can speak my mind. The Second Amendment to our Constitution reads, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." When these words were written, nobody questioned what they meant. Today, these words are at the center of one of the nation's largest public debates. The debate is about who, if anyone, should own firearms. One side says only the police and military should have firearms. The other side says that firearms ownership is a right to be enjoyed by all law-abiding citizens. This is the essence of the gun control debate. The right to keep and bear arms was not new to our founding fathers. The documented right of free men to possess personally owned firearms dates back well over 1,000 years. But this right is probably much older than that. Gun control restrictions on the manufacture and ownership of firearms is nothing new either. The invention of the wheel lock, the first truly portable firearm in the 16th century, led to some of the first attempts at what is today commonly known as gun control. By 1662, the English Parliament, under pressure from King Charles II, passed a statute which empowered lieutenants appointed by the king, quote, "to search for and seize all arms in the custody or possession of any person or persons whom the said lieutenant or any two or more of their deputies shall judge to be dangerous to the peace of the kingdom," unquote. By proclamation, Charles ordered gunsmiths to produce records of all firearms sold. Importation of firearms from overseas was banned, and carriers throughout the realm were forbidden to transport firearms without first obtaining a license. These 1662 English firearm laws are chillingly similar to the federal firearms laws we live under today. Firearms ownership in England became increasingly restrictive until William of Orange came to power. In 1689, an English Bill of Rights was drafted and accepted by William. This document restored numerous liberties, including a general right to own arms. In the American colonies, British troops had begun efforts to disarm colonists as early as 1768. The British resorted to every possible tactic to disarm Americans: entrapment, false promises of safekeeping, banning imports, direct seizures, and finally shooting persons bearing arms. Our founding fathers were well versed on the issue of gun control and its results. When the time came to ratify the Constitution, several states demanded a Bill of Rights as a condition for their ratification. Delegates from Pennsylvania proposed 15 amendments to protect various freedoms. Included in these proposed amendments was a provision for keeping and bearing arms. It read, that the people have a right to bear arms for the defense of themselves and their own state or the United States, or for the purpose of killing game, and no law shall be passed for disarming the people or any of them unless for crimes committed or real danger of public injury from individuals. This clearly defines an individual right. These proposed amendments were not adopted by the Pennsylvania delegate, but they were widely read by the colonies and formed the inspiration for later proposals. After much debate, the authors of our Constitution finally arrived at the wording we have today for the Second Amendment. To our founding fathers, a well-regulated militia was a militia composed of citizens that were practiced and trained in the use of their own arms. The National Guard is not the militia of the Second Amendment. First of all, the National Guard, as it exists today, is organized under Congress's power to raise and support armies. Further, in the debates discussing the militia, the concept of a select militia, which would have many of the attributes we associate with our current National Guard, was debated and rejected. Furthermore, in 1989, the Supreme Court ruled that the National Guard is not the militia of the Second Amendment. The people are the militia of the Second Amendment. These are the same people in the First, Fourth, Ninth, and 10th Amendments. Attempts at gun control continued as our nation developed. Many of the residents of this state may be interested in an incident which occurred in 1838. The Mormons in the community of far west Missouri were furnished a copy of the infamous extermination order issued by the state's governor, Lilburn Boggs. General Samuel Lucas offered the Mormons safe conduct out of the state as several conditions, Included in these conditions was a demand that they give up their arms, which we returned to them at a later date. The Mormons demands. Yes, the next day a mob bent on destroying the Mormons was released on citizens of Far West. Gun control has also had racial motivations. Black codes were enacted after the Civil War in many southern states to keep the recently emancipated slaves from firearms. Several southern states also enacted laws prohibiting the sale of inexpensive handguns to blacks and poor whites from owning firearms. In 1902, South Carolina's sale of handguns to all but, quote, sheriffs and their special deputies, unquote. Any guess on who the deputies were? 1911 saw the enactment of New York's Sullivan Law. This law required a police permit for legal possession of a handgun. The effect was to keep handguns out of the hands of Southern and Eastern European, including Catholics and Jews. This law has become increasingly restrictive in effect. Today, the police only issue permits to the wealthy or politically influential. There are suggestions that the passage of the Gun Control Act of 1968 was, in part, racially motivated. Robert Sherrill, an investigative reporter, claims Congress was so panicked by the ghetto riots of 1967 and 1968 that it passed the act to, quote, shut off the weapons access to the, unquote. Today, gun control is still in fashion. Today, the supporters of gun control, the snake oil salesmen of old, claim that it will solve all of our ills. Gun control will make America a kinder and gentler place to live. The media portrays guns as bad, as having no use but to kill. Likewise, gun owners, with the exception of guns who actually support gun control, are lunatics, time bombs waiting to go off. The National Rifle Association, a group of nearly 1 million citizens which valiantly defends the basic right to possess arms, is attacked viciously by the media. Isn't it curious how those who support gun control use their First Amendment rights to attack the amendment? So, just what has the media been telling us? Just this week, murder is the #1 cause of death for black teenage males. What is the media's solution to this problem? Require handguns owners to pass a yet-to-be-defined test to get a license to even own a handgun. And those who do not have this handgun license would be required to turn their handguns over to the government. How is licensing handgun owners going to keep hands out of the hands of criminal youth, which are already prohibited by law from even purchasing handguns? The media has been telling us that firearms are for self-defense and that they are more dangerous to the owner than to the criminal. I won't bore you with statistics that prove the media propaganda wrong. Self-defense is probably the most civil rights. Gun control advocates in the media have no right to turn self-defense into a privilege. Self-defense is a right, not a privilege. Attempts to defend oneself aren't always successful, but this is no reason to try. But this is what the media tells us, especially women. The media expects us to criminal for mercy, put up with what the criminal dishes out, and then call 911, assuming you are capable of doing so. The media has been telling us that so-called assault weapons are the choice of criminals. This is pure fiction. Approximately 1.5% of the firearms seized by police fall within the rather loose weapon category. The media also tries to blame suicides on guns. They tell us there are fewer suicides if firearms are not readily available. Yet they fail to explain why Canada and Japan, with far more restrictive gun laws, have much suicide rates. For several years, gun control advocates have been trying to sell waiting periods for firearms purchases. They claim that a waiting period would, of course, reduce crime by allowing the police time to check the background of the potential purchaser before sale. They claim this would help keep firearms out of the hands of criminals. At present, over 80% of the criminals get their firearms from other than legitimate retail channels, where the waiting period would be. The waiting period will only make this number climb, since no criminal, except for the very stupid ones, would wait for a waiting period. Besides, I have a problem with having to prove my innocence and wait several days before completing my firearms purchase. Another aspect of the waiting period issue ignored by the media is women. Unfortunately, some find their lives being threatened by an estranged husband or boyfriend. At that point, they need to defend themselves now. But since self-defense is becoming a privilege and they are being hysterical about the threat to their life, they are expected to wait. And some with the waiting periods, this happens now, and women have died waiting for their firearm. The media doesn't report this. Last December, the media glowingly reported a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine that proved that gun control saves lives. This study purported that after Washington, D.C. enacted a law which virtually ended private ownership of handguns, homicides dropped 25%. Yes, folks, Washington, D.C., murder capital of the world, the city with the highest homicide rate in the nation, the city with the fastest homicide rate in the nation, had cut homicides by 25% by banning handguns. Not to cloud the issue with facts, but according to the FBI, homicide rate before the ban took to 1976 was 26.9. In 1990, the homicide was 77.8. 77.8 is not 25% less than 26.9. The media is not afraid of manufacturing an issue. A real issue to report on cannot be found. They have done this with plastic hand killer bullets and other non-issues. The media has also ignored the downside of control. Tyrants have always loved gun control, especially gun registration. You're probably thinking it can't happen here, but it is. New York City has gun registration, and owners of many rifles and shotguns have been asked by the police commissioner of the city of New York their firearms, have them rendered inoperative or dispose of them out of state. The reply will subject these lawful firearm owners to significant criminal penalties. The point I'm trying is that gun control doesn't work as advertised. Gun control does not cut crime. Gun control does life safer. But gun control is good if what you're trying to do is control people. Tyrants love gun control. Gun control does otherwise law-abiding citizens into criminals with the stroke of a pen. Gun control does destroy. But I believe that our founding fathers, in their wisdom, provided this amendment as another check in our government systems of checks and balances. Today, apathy is a threat to freedom. Too many people think of freedom as 99 cable channels, beer in the refrigerator, a shopping mall, and a place called home where they can safely cower. These people want a life as safe and free from risk and responsibility as possible, no matter what the cost. We have watched our freedoms and our Constitution eroded away, bit by bit, piece by piece, always sold as being for the common good, always in the interest of the country. Our Constitution is for the common good and in the best interest of the country. Those who have no problem with giving up or infringing on a few freedoms to fight crime or to win the drug, hear these words of Thomas Jefferson. Those that can give up essential liberties to obtain temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety.